It's a good week to be a Chiefs fan. We have updates for you on Clyde Edwards-Helaire, what's going on, who's off the COVID list, how the Chiefs prospects are going towards that postseason, what else is going around the league. A lot to cover here. Welcome to Locked On Chiefs.
From the land of the free and the home of the Chiefs, this is the Locked On Chiefs podcast.
Welcome back, everybody. Thanks for making us your first listen. Pick out another Locked On show to have a listen to if you'd like. You can hear some mock drafts over at the draft show. That's always a lot of fun. Fun is something I think you could describe today and throughout, not only Chiefs Kingdom, but Arrowhead One. I think over there in the headquarters, fun to breathe a sigh of relief that X-rays confirmed it last night that there was no break. Today, it looks like there was no significant damage to the shoulder and specifically collarbone of Clyde Edwards-Helaire. That's pretty positive news on a day after when you were starting to prepare for the worst yesterday.
Yeah, no, it definitely is. And I think that that's a great sign for Kansas City. I would imagine that Clyde is probably out the next 2 weeks. I can't imagine they'll let him be playing. And Kansas City right now is in a position where if they win one more game and the Titans lose, then they're the number one seed. And maybe Clyde doesn't play for 3 weeks because you have, a bye in between. So I think he's out to the playoffs, but I still think that's a positive for Kansas City.
Yeah, either way, as long as he gets the rest and he's able to get back to full strength, that shoulder is important. You have to be able to deliver those blows like you saw him do on that touchdown run. So you want him to be able to take the time if needed. And certainly if they get a little bit more of a breather with the Titans taking a loss, which is now, I think, more closely within the realm of possibility after today's actions. Some transactions around the league, and then we'll tell you about the Chiefs transactions as well.
Yeah, man, Julio Jones and Bud Dupree went on the COVID list. There was another, there was another Titans player that went on the COVID list as well. I think the NFL is about to have a really bad COVID problem. I hate saying that after what the Chiefs went through last week, but I think I saw that there was 109 people that went on the COVID list today.
That is a ton of players across the league that you just have to be able to deal with at this point. And the Chiefs got bitten. Let's hope that they can avoid it going forward. They were able to get some guys back, a couple of practice squatters, and then most importantly, Kyle Long is now back off the COVID list and would be available if needed. I think that helps. Still waiting to hear on Lucas Niang. Really want to see him get back into the mix here, and hopefully that happens sooner than later, but that is anybody else coming of note. I don't think so. In the end, practice squad and Joseph Charlton, who had been signed as the punter, has been released from the practice squad as well. So that was a COVID-specific move. I can't think that there was anything else really playing into that.
Yeah, and I apologize. I just saw an update. I think it was 96 players went on the COVID list today. That's still a lot of players. And I think I'm sitting here looking at my phone because there's so many different stats out there that it's ridiculous. From Adam Schefter about an hour ago. Last year, from the start of the regular season through the Super Bowl, there were 262 player positives. There already have been more than 400 player positives in the month of December alone. So, a huge problem.
Yeah, it is, and it's only going to get worse.
And I don't want to really get into it too much, but I will say I also saw that the CDC announced that the quarantine period should only be 5 days for somebody with a positive now. So, a little bit of changing information. And I guess the only reason I point that out is because it's still a changing situation overall.
Yeah, it narrows the time that you can risk exposure. And so hopefully that helps everyone as well, and both in return to normality, but also in controlling the spread and who else not only could infect you, but that you could infect once you are positive. I think the Chiefs have a very good handle on this. I think there was obviously a scare, but they handled it better than we thought even, and we will go over more the details of this past game and the blowout that it was for the Pittsburgh Steelers. But I think that was the concern, is how could you deal with that? I think they certainly did do that. A little bit of news as well. Bashaud Breeland will not be returning to the Kansas City Chiefs. He is going to become an Arizona Cardinal as of tonight. The injury to Marco Wilson, I think, is really what turned that around. And so while it would have made a fit clearly with the return of Travarius Ward already, Snead back. Now they should get Fenton back most likely this week, and I think they'll be back to full strength. So maybe that made Bashaud redundant at this point.
Yeah, and you start looking at some of the other AFC West teams that are going to be dealing with COVID, and as well. Chargers put 3 players on that are going to be out this week. So I apologize. Possible that they're going to be missing more players, so they could drop another game. Maybe they'll miss the playoffs because of it. It's going to be a huge problem, and I'm really curious to see how this week plays out. The positive sign for Kansas City is they didn't have any positive tests today. So
I will take that all day. At that point, you can hope, you can cross your fingers that hopefully they can stay that way. It will be an ongoing discussion, and we will update you whenever we know. But in the meantime, if you want to lay some of your action out there, the holiday season, the best time to cover all the props and odds and lines that you want for the rest of this football season, including all the college playoff games, as well as the rest of the bowls, those that are actually still being competed against because they seem to be dropping like flies. But BetOnline.ag remains the number one spot for all of your sports action that you want to get going. Head over there and check out their website. You'll receive a 50% bonus welcome when you sign up from your first deposit. If you use our code Locked On, that means you get your deposit plus half that amount on top of it from BetOnline. You can use it for any sport that you like, and most importantly, football. And BetOnline is the fastest, easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. Get your action on the line. So don't wait to take advantage of it. And this amazing offer is here right now at BetOnline, where the game starts.
Had to get in the old on the line sign.
I have to. It's on the DVR now, and I made the kids watch it. So now they're like, Dad, are you on the line tonight? Yes, I am. Thank you, child.
My daughter absolutely loved that. I could not, when I watched it with her a couple weeks ago, maybe a couple months ago now, actually, to think about it, she absolutely loved that line. I joked about it, and I said, yeah, Ryan and I are just always giggling about this, but it's great.
I guess it's weird, though, because I'm Owen Wilson in that scenario, right? I'm not sure how that works, but
yeah, I guess you are Owen Wilson.
That's all right. I can damage this nose a little bit more. I'll be fine.
Hey, I'm the big goofy dude. That's fine. Whatever.
Right? Yeah, that works, I think, actually.
Yeah.
Speaking of damaging, I don't know what's left of the Steelers. There certainly can't be much pride after that whooping. I don't know how they bounce back from that.
Did you see Big Ben's wife on TV?
I did not.
Oh man, they showed her during the broadcast. It was not pretty, and I can't imagine it got any better as the game went on. So
I can only imagine. A couple of things to touch on about the way that game went down, and I know we all had our takeaways, but it was confirmed today when the snap counts came out. Tyreek Hill played less than half of the snaps, and I think that goes to show you what Tyreek Hill can be. And once they established that, they didn't have to try him out there that much. You were easy on him. And I think that was actually really key in keeping not only he fresh and not just this week, but for coming weeks, but also allowing the guys to step up. And we all know what Byron Pringle did. We talked a bit about Hardman yesterday. Also need to point out that, let's see, Darrell had 29 snaps, well below half. I think Derek Gordon made the most of his 19 snaps in this ballgame. I think that's safe to say. But you got some prime performances from a lot of the offensive line, including Andrew Wiley, who was nearly as good in terms of pressure cancellation as Creed Humphrey was. And Creed was absolutely dealing last night.
Yeah. Creed played a fantastic game, and you saw what Andrew Wiley did. And I know I said this on Twitter earlier when the PFF grades came out. And yes, I know they're not everything, but they are what they are. And a lot of people will use them. And I thought that when I saw the game, Andrew Wiley played pretty well. TJ Watt didn't get a sack. So
yeah,
it's about all you can really say.
Right?
Well, I get that he was hurt, and people are going to say that, and I completely get it, and you're absolutely correct. He was hurt, but it's still TJ Watt, and it's still Andrew Wiley going against TJ Watt on a snap by snap basis. And I don't remember him getting a penalty either, so it's not like he was holding them. So it was a positive game for him, and I think that's got to make Kansas City feel very comfortable going into the postseason, knowing that they have that depth there.
Well, that depth, and honestly, their front line is now cohesed, even with the rotation that's been going on at right tackle because of injuries and COVID. They've gotten to the point where the other four are locked down. And Orlando Brown made the Pro Bowl. It triggered a nice bonus in his contract. Like we talked a lot about him in particular, but to see him along with Creed Humphrey, knowing that they have, probably a better edge rush than they have a middle rush, to put up zero pressures, zero at all. Patrick not only did not get sacked, he wasn't hit in this ball game. And I think that's even the more important thing, is that he didn't have physical contact that he had to deal with. And that is 100% thank you to that offensive line and those guys in particular. In fact, as I go down the pressure list here, Wiley gave up 1 hurry. Tooney and Smith each gave up 1 hurry. That was it.
He did get sacked, though. They might have put it on Patrick, but he did get sacked during the game. So I just want to throw that out there. But
yeah,
I
fair
don't know
point. You're right. I forgot about that.
Yeah. Sorry.
And that's where the pressure rates come in, is because that they did put that on Patrick. Now that I see that, you're absolutely right.
No, and I get it. I mean, it is what it is, but I just want to point out, he did get 1 sack on him, and that makes a lot of sense. And I think Haney got the other sack because he fumbled the ball. So, I mean, it is what it is there. And that's actually concerning. They need to get that figured out, just for the simple fact of, you hope that Haney never has to play, but you don't want to have that situation happen again. And it reminded me a lot of the Tyler Bray situation when Patrick Mahomes' first start. But the real point here is when they put the sack on Mahomes, that means that they thought he should have gotten rid of the ball already. And that is by far absolutely the truth on that play that I can remember, because he held the ball forever. And I get why he did it, because he's trying to make a play, and that's fine. And he's going to take hits like that at times. But at the same time, it's one of those things. It's like, okay, well, you're going to get some pressure if you're going to hold on to the ball a lot.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's just my fault for getting that stat should be in there when you isolate the pass blocking. At that point, though, even with that one play and knowing that you are putting that on Mahomes, it comes down to the fact that the Pittsburgh Steelers, who are still technically in the hunt for a playoff spot, were not able to affect that offensive line at all.
Yeah, and they're the number 2 to sack team in the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget that. That's a huge thing. And that's another reason I want to point that out, is because they came into that game with 41 sacks on the season. And yes, TJ Watt takes care of a lot of those, but they didn't have the pressure on Mahomes. And when you get the chance to hold the ball for 8 seconds in order to throw a touchdown, he could have basically knitted a sweater at that point.
Yeah, when you're dancing in the backfield, I kind of like that. But back to the actual pass blockers. For that group, and quite frankly, for Wiley to be part of that group against Watt, who we understand was injured, but for them not to give up any contacts against the quarterback as a pass blocker, you have to take that away. And while I thought we might get a deal on Orlando Brown here going, mid-season, I think that is probably a thing of the past. And if his continued performance, particularly in the playoffs, end up like this, where he is the guy that has been susceptible speed rush, and if he can lock that up like he has the last few weeks, I think this is going to be a payday that is not going to be any discount like we may have thought halfway through the season. Maybe it's not going to be like the absolute barn burner, right? You're happy with the situation, yes?
I mean, yeah. I mean, I get what you're saying, and I understand why you thought there was going to be a little bit of a discount. But if he plays like he's played the past 4 or 5 weeks, or maybe even a little longer, I think that Kansas City has to be willing to give him all the money in the world to back or to be that left tackle for Patrick Mahomes, because in reality, that's the most important position, and he takes care of Mahomes' backside. So, and the bigger thing for me is if you lock him up long term, then you've got that whole left side of the line all the way to center guaranteed to be there for years, and I guess even the right guard for years. So at that point, you're just trying to figure out who your right tackle is. I still think it's going to be Niang, but at that point, you're still in a situation where you basically got your entire starting offensive line good for the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah. And that makes the cohesion part, the moving from year to year to year. And I know it didn't look that great early in the year, folks, but now we're talking about this team going back to a 3rd consecutive Super Bowl, at least as a possibility, maybe not as the favorite, but as a possibility. That only helps when you're already there. And now this is the quote unquote new unit here, and you can get that kind of continuity going forward. That only helps the strength of your football team stay strong.
Well, and I want to point out, you and I both said this so many times when they brought Orlando Brown in and they brought in all these new pieces. It was going to take weeks, if not months, for this line to get right and get to where they're actually playing as a unit and playing cohesively. And they're finally there. I think this is a fantastic offensive line, and I think Brett Veach needs to be commended for the job he's done. If he can attack just a couple of positions for Kansas City in the offseason, like he attacked the offensive line, attack wide receiver. Attack maybe CB, because it's possible Kansas City's going to need several of those.
Yeah,
I think they're
there's
going to
not
be
many
in.
edge rushers going to be on this roster
There you
either.
go.
So
That too. Yep.
Oh, and speaking of edge rushers, we're going to get into them because a number of performances last night, I think, went under a little bit under the radar on the defensive side. We're going to get to them and where we're going in these future matchups that we can kind of look forward to here, or at least look toward. We'll get to that coming up next. I thought the interesting part of last night is it wasn't a dominant game by any one pass rusher, but I felt the front six, mostly in the nickel, in the front six, played well all the way around. There wasn't a weak point. You saw, did they even have, they had a run of 12 yards was the best the Steelers put together. I mean, that says a lot. It does help. I do want to say that you have the rotation ability. Because when I look at the snap counts in particular, Frank and Jaron Reed only played 29 snaps out of, I think it was 69 was the grand total. Juan Thornhill being the only guy that played 100% of them. You had rotation there. That kept things, I think, moving.
Yeah, and I think that's great to point out that Frank Clark only played half the snaps or less than half the snaps. He got a sack. He got pressure when he was in there. Chris Jones got pressure. The other thing that really needs to be pointed out is if you look at it, I would have to go back and rewatch the game. But from what I remember, as soon as Kansas City got up 24 points, those guys really were not in very much. I mean, they may come in on a third down or on a long second down type thing, but they weren't in very much. So they were getting the young guys more and more snaps. Wharton got a lot of snaps. Even Derek Nottie, I don't think got very many snaps. He may have gotten more than he normally does, but in this type of game, he's not going to be the type of player that you would expect to get a ton of snaps because the Steelers couldn't run the ball.
Right. Let's talk about Wharton for a minute, though, because I think he is one of the guys that had an under the radar game. Yes, there was the play to create the fumble, but outside of that, I don't think many people appreciated just how productive he was. It was 29 pass rush snaps for him. He produced 7 pressures off of that, led the roster in this ball game. Alex Okafor was right behind him at 5. And again, because of the volume of the substitutions, that your starters weren't among the leaders, but those two guys being the second string interior and exterior pass rushers, that's again rising towards the postseason, rising towards finishing this upcoming game against the Bengals and trying to close out your season strong. Those are guys that are needed.
And say what you want about the Steelers' offensive line not being great, that's fine. They're still a starting offensive line in the NFL. And for your second teamers to cause that kind of havoc against a starting offensive line is a great scenario for Kansas City to be in, and definitely something that we didn't think we were going to see with the way that the season started the first couple of weeks. So I think you have to be really excited about how that's played out so far.
Yeah, I have to think.
And you still could be getting guys back too. I mean, Saunders is a possibility of coming back, I think. Kendo is looking like they already activated him, but he's not on the active roster. So it's possible they'll be getting him back in the next couple of weeks. And Cincinnati's offensive line is okay, but they're not great. So I think you have to feel pretty good about that matchup too.
Yeah, I have to agree. And you're getting low volume production from a lot of different players. When you look at who had tackles for loss, it was Anthony Hitchens, who had one of the better grades as far as PFF goes, but actually put out some good numbers in terms of total tackles, had one of the tackles for loss, as did two of the corners in Snead and Ward.
But you also saw it on film with Hitchens, which is the big thing. Like, you saw him doing things that if he does that on a consistent basis, this defense is going to be very good. It's the things that we've wanted for him to do consistently. When he was flying to the ball early in the game and going after the running back like he was on the sideline, that's exactly what you want to see from a guy like that. So very encouraging. And this was out without the Chiefs defensive player of the year or defensive rookie of the year, I guess I'll say, in Nick Bolton playing. I mean, their leading tackler didn't even play in this game, and they just throttled the Steelers. Yeah, and how crazy
from Willie Gay.
How crazy is it to think that Kansas City is going to be in a situation where they have to figure out the offensive or the rookie of the year for their team? I mean, I understand who it's going to be, but they have 3 guys that have a huge legitimate case.
Yeah. And that's a great thing to have. It's a year when you're like, oh, who are we going to give this to, that it becomes a problem.
Right. And not only that, but it also goes back to the thought of Reed and Spagnuolo really didn't play rookies very much. So to even have that type of impact from 3 different guys, It's phenomenal. So I think they're in a great spot, and I mean that's a very encouraging going forward.
Yeah, and they can build the next couple weeks are really what it's going to take to do that, because you have two ball games at this point, folks. You have the Bengals and the Broncos. Can you take that and amp that up in any way? I think what we saw rotationally was a part of game flow because they had the lead, but hopefully that's part of the goal as well for the next couple of weeks. If you can get out on the Bengals, I think they have a much better chance of coming back, because their offense does have a whole lot more power than I think the Broncos offense does. But if you can get some rotation in there as well, I think that they've had their own couple of struggles with COVID. I don't know that anything major is going to happen there. I haven't seen anything on the Bengals rosters today.
I
The
did.
Broncos. Oh, did you? Fill me in.
Is it Brandon Allen, their backup quarterback, is on the COVID list.
Okay.
So that's not a huge one, but I mean, he is a quarterback. So you start wondering,
It's in the
okay,
room.
right.
Yeah.
It's in the room. So is that coming with the Bengals? And bigger thing, really, it's on the team at this point. Kansas City dealt with it last week. I mean, they had 3 players on Tuesday, and then, or was it 3 players on Monday? I don't remember what day it was. It was Monday or Tuesday, and then the next day they had 5 or 6 or 7. So, question is there something coming in that room, or just in general?
Yeah. I don't even want to get into that, but you never know. And so they have to be prepared. And I hope that they can keep this rotation going, especially on the defensive side, get some of the young guys a few more reps, let everybody finish the season kind of rested. And if they can play that out, if what we're seeing in Tennessee in terms of them losing players leads to another loss for Tennessee, that means that the final regular season game against the Broncos is going to be something that you want to get some rest for certain positions, certain players who have had a long season, including Travis Kelce, even though I expect him to be back. So that's something to keep an eye on as well. It happens all over the league. It's not just Kansas City, but keep an eye out for that and how that progresses. That'll give you an idea how they finish the season.
Yeah, and the other thing that playing in Denver could give you the ability to do, and this is the one of the small reasons why it would be okay if they had to play out in week 17 or week 18. They're gonna have to play in cold weather. They really haven't had it yet. I can't imagine January is not going to be cold in Kansas City, and I think that could affect games. I would like to see all those guys get the opportunity to go out there and play in cold weather, and I think they'll get the chance in Denver. But again, when you're talking about having an active roster going into this game, unless they have a huge COVID outbreak, which I'm not hoping for at all, they're going to have some starters or some other key guys that they're going to have to play because there's just not enough players.
So rally the troops, get everybody you can. Use it to your advantage, however that happens. We're going to have more with Matt Derrick tomorrow about where they go from here and what they can expect. Hopefully we'll have a clearer picture by Wednesday of what Clyde Edwards-Helaire is capable of. They did list him as week to week, so we'll have more on that. And then we will start looking at these Cincinnati Bengals, who, again, do pose a little bit of threat. We'll have more for you all week long. We appreciate you guys hanging in and spending your time with us today. Thanks for making us your first listen. We'll be back with you tomorrow